Welcome to Bamford Rose, and it's question of the week time. Now in this week's question of the week we need to get serious about pre-purchase inspections. So stay tuned and we'll go through it. But before we get into that, let's just clear something up. Now what you're looking at here definitely is not a 2010 white V12 Vantage manual 6-speed with about 15,000 miles on the clock, trading for about £65,000. Get that out of your heads, it's clearly not that. This is a 1980s flying machine. Now if you are interested in something like this, then it definitely hasn't got a whine in 6th gear. In fact, it hasn't even got a 6th gear, because we're not talking about a white 2010 V12 Vantage. Now this car is definitely not being sold by a trader, a broker, not even a trader with a workshop. It's definitely not being sold by a broker that trades cars like they're trading playing cards. Buy the card in at little money, sell the card out at high money. No, it's certainly not that. And this car certainly isn't being sold at £65,000. That when you do consider all of that looming maintenance that it needs, would probably put you in at about 10k, then it certainly isn't the car where you would consider something like a V12 Vantage S with a higher price to start with, but once you've spent that money, you don't need to spend any more money on maintenance. Therefore your all up spend isn't going to spiral out of control. No, it's certainly not that. Great, so I'm glad we've cleared that up. Now, since we have, let's go and talk about pre-purchase inspections.
So let's get serious about pre-purchase inspections. Now that joke intro is because a trader had got their bottom in their hands, because a car that came here for a pre-purchase inspection, we identified a number of issues with it and ultimately advised the customer not to go through with the purchase at the price that it was being sold at. Now, if the trader hadn't got his bottom in his hands and was more interested in the customer buying the end product, then we could have worked together, fixed some issues on that car, and then that transaction would have been a good one. But isn't it typical of some types of trader? When everything's happy and there's no problems, they're your best friend, but when you identify an issue that needs some customer after sales service, they get all defensive. Now, if there's two things I've learned being around Astons for the last 13 years in this repair and service environment, it would be number one, if ever I owned a V12 car, from day one I would remove the primary catalysts, and number two, I would never ever buy an Aston without a pre-purchase inspection. Now this is me saying that, and I've got easy access to a workshop and parts to fix cars with. So if I would never buy an Aston without a pre-purchase inspection, having that safety net, then why should you? Now we all want a hassle-free, pleasurable Aston ownership experience, and these cars are out there. Now take this Virage. This was recently in for service. It's approaching 13 years old now. It's only got about 12,000 miles on the clock, this one. Underside is absolutely perfect. There's no deferred maintenance, and this car doesn't need any care and attention at all above minor servicing. So these cars are out there. Now you've got to go and hunt them down, and I would say typically these cars are being sold by the franchise dealer network. Now if you've watched any of my previous videos, you'll know that I highly recommend buying your Aston from the franchise network. You can buy the car without doing a pre-purchase inspection, do a post-purchase inspection just for peace of mind, but behind the scenes you've got that timeless approved used warranty taking care of you should there be any niggles in that interim period after you've bought the car. Any other garage, and I do mean any garage selling a car other than franchise dealer, you need an independent pre-purchase inspection. Let's just say that you bought a car from an independent seller and then brought it to someone like us for a post-purchase inspection, and we noted down that the engine has got a really undesirable rattling or ticking sound to it. Perhaps we can identify that that's piston slap or the onset of some other condition. Now, if you took the car back to that trader, they're more than likely going to say, well, you know, Astons, they're all a bit agricultural, they can all sound a bit mechanical, there's nothing wrong with that. And then as soon as you've paid your money for the car, you're in a little bit of a dispute with them because they're saying that the car is running fine, yet someone else is saying, hey, this is going to develop into an issue in the short term. Or like that white V12 Vantage that we didn't inspect earlier. If you had a whine in 6th gear, again they'll say, well, they're normal, the gearboxes sound agricultural. But let's just imagine that during the first few thousand miles of your ownership you noticed that that whine was getting progressively louder. Then ultimately you know that gearbox is on its path to failure. If they say that that is a normal type of sound and they won't fix the car, then you're left with the uncertainty of, is that going to develop into a problem and something that needs fixing, and would that be outside of any warranty? Just 2 examples there of where you can totally avoid any unpleasant discussions post-purchase by having a pre-purchase inspection. Now, if there was an engine rattle or something like a gearbox whine, then perhaps previous owners knew of this, and that's why the car is in the marketplace. This is because I see this a lot. Most big problems get traded, they don't actually get fixed. And that's because the price to repair these cars can be quite high, considering all the parts and labour that's needed. If a car generates a big bill inside the workshop, then instead of it being a component failure, a manufacturing defect, or anything like that, the #1 reason is previous owner's deferred maintenance. So this 06 V8 Vantage was recently put into service with me. Now, it was booked in for just a service. This car was new to the owner by about 1 week and I think 50 miles. It was bought private, and I think it's fair to say that the previous owner glossed over some of the issues with this car. So let's quickly run through them. Now, we've got to take the engine out because there is a colossal front cover oil seal leak. Whilst the engine's out, it's wise to check the tappet shims. It also needs a new aircon compressor, it's exploded. It needs an aircon condenser. It needs a clutch, it needs the ASM pipes, it needs a rear frame restoration, it needs all lower wishbone arms, it needs a car set of dampers, it needs 4 wheel bearings. That's approximately £20,000 worth of work on a car with a market value of about £25,000, and all of that could have been detected for a £350 pre-purchase inspection. It doesn't matter how new the car is, how low miles the car is, how shiny it is, how convincing Swiss Tony, the car trader, you know the types, they drive Ferrari F50s and they talk themselves into prison cells. It doesn't matter how convincing they are, you need a pre-purchase inspection. Now, if you've watched previous videos of mine, you'll also know that the history, if you've just got a service book with some stamps in, is no good either. What you really need is the last service raw inspection sheet notes that the technician wrote down, not some sanitized traffic light status that you get from some garages. You know, you need the real detailed notes that the technician wrote down at the time of inspecting the car. A clutch wear figure if it's a sport shift, a condition report on the carbon ceramic brakes, any misfire, especially if it's a V12, condition of the breather circuit, together with suspension, steering, cooling, air conditioning parts. If there's minor issues with any of these, they can stack up big repair bills. That's why you need a pre-purchase inspection, because you'll get a report of all the car's spend that's needed now. The market has got to start voting with its feet on this one. If any trader outside of the franchise dealer network is reluctant for the car to be sent somewhere for a pre-purchase inspection, then walk away. That car is not for you, that trader is not for you. If you haven't got service sheets and a load of history to back up previous stamps in the book, then walk away. Especially walk away without a pre-purchase inspection. So I've mentioned on previous videos that if we were going to do a pre-purchase inspection, it's not really feasible for us to go to another garage and conduct that away from our own workshop. Now, I've been contacted lots about pre-purchase inspection over the last few months since stating that, and decided to make it really easy for cars to come here. We've now got good, quick access at covered transportation. So you can sort out directly the transportation costs with our provider, and that can get the car here completely hassle-free. So that leaves us enough time to do a pre-purchase inspection, a road test, and give a good considered report to a car. So if the car is being collected professionally and it's going to be cared for and professionally inspected and then returned if it was no good after maybe a couple of days, then there is absolutely no excuse for these traders to not want a pre-purchase inspection being conducted on the car. I've heard the stories a million times before. Oh, we've prepared the car very well, we don't need Bamford Rose to do a pre-purchase inspection. And a car locally has come from a garage for us to do a post-purchase inspection because the owner drove it straight here from a post-purchase inspection. And before we put a car up in the air, it's a lights check and a locking and an alarm check. You know, this is because if the LED strip goes on a V8, well, if you bought a new lamp to solve that problem, that's £1,300. And it's very, very common for door modules to fail, and locking and window operation is affected. And before we've even put the car up on a ramp, we've locked the car, and then because the door modules have failed, we've opened the passenger door from the passenger door handle, and because the passenger door module is faulty, it's unlocked the entire car. So, you know, there was no need for Bamford Rose to do an inspection, but hey, before we've even put it up in the air, we've already found about £1,500 worth of defects that never got spotted during the pre-sales delivery inspection. So if you want my advice, then you'll not be buying your Aston Martin unless you have a pre-purchase inspection. Now this does open a question for purchasing from another route, which will be a lot of these auction sites that are popping up now, and a lot of people are taking a real big risk buying sight unseen. Now if that's the case, then that risk should correspond with a significant reduction under market value of a car. So for cars from any of these auction sites, the most prestigious or the new pop-up, then I'll be treating them the same. You know, you can sort of look at windowing values. So at the very bottom end, you could look at what places like We Buy Any Car would offer for it. At the very top end, you could look at a car for sale from the franchise dealer, same sort of age and mileage, and see what price they're selling at. So now you've got the two bookends. Now you could go on eBay Auto Trader and have a look at what sort of the most average price is of those cars selling, and that will sort of give you, you know, a bookended minimum, maximum and an average price. So now if you look at the car for sale at auction, you probably look at that average price and then take at least 10 or 15 grand off of it, because you're taking the risk of buying sight unseen, and if it goes into the workshop then it could need some major correction, and that 10 or 15 grand off of that sort of average asking price would give you a safety net. Obviously, when we do a pre-purchase inspection, we've got to be pragmatic. It's a car that is wearing and tearing, and a certain amount of wear and tear is acceptable, but that's got to correspond with the price of that car relative to the marketplace. What we really need to check for and make sure someone doesn't buy is a car that has a defect, it needs a repair doing, and especially if that repair was a clutch or a rear subframe, something pretty major, then relative to other cars in the marketplace, that price needs factoring in to make sure that the purchase price is correct. Go back to the start and our example of the white V12S that we didn't inspect. Then if that car was here for service and the owner had had it a while, we'd be having a chat about the level of sixth gear whine and was it getting any worse. It's something to monitor, and we'd be having a chat about the condition of the rear subframe to identify the point that it does need corrective restoration. But at point of purchase, now we're doing a pre-purchase inspection instead of a service, then identifying that in the short-term horizon those two jobs are needed and what the cost of those is has got to be taken into account with the purchase price of the car. Got very good now at doing this, completely detailing a car's history, working out what is pragmatic to be accepted as normal wear and tear, differing that from repairs, and then looking at the cost of those repairs versus the market value of the car. And this is the report that we would do for any pre-purchase inspection. Now, the people that get upset about this are the traders, but it proves, if they get upset, that they're just not interested in the customer that they're selling the car to. All they're interested in is their bottom line. Now, on cars for sale with traders, let's just say that we identified the car really does need £5,000 worth of work immediately, and we look at the market value, see that the price is a bit high, and then a prospective buyer might go and do a deal with that trader to say, well, you know, I'll take it for £5,000 off the asking price. Good traders that are interested in the product that they're selling to their customers come to some sort of deal to repair the car like that. But a lot of these don't care what your pre-purchase inspection report says, because they'll not lower the price, because they'll just be waiting for someone to come along who hasn't done their homework and buys the car without a pre-purchase inspection. Now, the market is a little bit in free fall at the moment, but that's more to do with the wider economic circumstances rather than anything to do with this brand in particular. So now is a really, really good time, if you've been looking at the market for a while, to pick up a bargain for your Aston Martin purchase. Just make sure that you do pick up a great ownership experience and not one that is fraught with problems. And you can do that by getting a pre-purchase inspection by Bamford Rose. Hope you liked that question of the week. As always, give us your comments, tell us about your buying experience. Click us a like, subscribe to the channel, and we'll catch you on next week's question of the week.